the influence of communism and the Cultural Revolution on Qigong as it's practiced today. That is going to be the topic of this episode of Qi Life. All right, so this is another topic that was requested by someone who watches the vlog, and it's one that I'm a little bit cautious about talking about too much because it is a little bit politically sensitive. But I think, we might as well talk about these things. And the history is quite well known, really. So it's not like there's any secrets here or anything like that. But unfortunately, there were some pretty negative impacts. I'm going to focus mainly on the Cultural Revolution rather than communism itself, because that's not so much the issue. It's more what happened during the Cultural Revolution that had, not a great impact on Qigong practice and lots of other aspects of Chinese culture. Unfortunately, what happened was they went through a phase where politically they decided that they wanted to break away from essentially all of their old past traditions, ways of knowledge, and embrace new thinking, And so it wasn't just a matter of like, let's take on new ideas. They actively tried to shut down the old ideas. And there was a period where there was intense persecution of was pretty much any intellectual, anyone who was influential in different areas relating to Chinese cultural knowledge. And so that includes not just Qigong, it includes things like Chinese medicine, spiritual practices and beliefs, and all sorts of things. And essentially, those were all almost shut down during that time within mainland China. Now, you note I say almost. So a couple of things happened at that time. One, a bunch of people who could leave left because life was pretty intolerable for them, particularly if they were someone who was working in this field or with those sorts of practices and that kind of knowledge. A lot of them got out and they went to other parts of Asia and even into the West at that time. And so some of the knowledge of these sorts of practices and things were preserved outside of mainland China. But then also within mainland China, not everything was completely shut down. Well, in particular, so the public practice of almost all of those things was shut down. But people continued to practice in private, in secrecy. And so, a fair amount was maintained by people who essentially went into hiding or practiced in secret. Now, coming out the other side of the Cultural Revolution, there was a period of, some refer to it as a period of reconstruction, because those in charge politically decided that, hey, actually, there is some value in these sorts of things, for a variety of reasons. Like, for example, with traditional Chinese medicine, they recognize that, hey, we're trying to move to a new way of using medicine, to take care of the health of our people. But we actually don't have the resources right now to offer this fully to all of our people. Maybe we could use this way of treating health that we've done for thousands of years. Maybe we could use that as well to also keep our people healthy. And so they decided to try to bring these back together. And reconstruction is actually a pretty good term, good way of describing this, because again, everyone, it had all been shut down, and everyone who was still practicing had gone into hiding. And so there was this effort to essentially bring people back together and go like, hey, that thing that we just, made your lives really difficult because of, can we maybe dust that off and put it back together. And the same applied with things like Qigong, also with martial arts in different ways, where a lot of this was, so for Qigong, again, in terms of maintenance of health, that was recognized as something that was beneficial, and that this could be a good thing. And then for things like martial arts, it was, recognized that this could be a source of national pride, national identity. And so again, they sort of started to try to reconstruct these, to put them back together. And yeah, so because of that, there was actually a period where I've talked broadly about some of the different things, but specifically for Qigong, there was a period where the practice of Qigong was quite encouraged. It was quite supported, but again, from this base of having just prior to that, the people being persecuted heavily, and so a lot of people were a bit hesitant about coming out and now practicing openly, but there was a period where it was quite strongly supported. And then since then, within China, it's gone through phases of political support, and then also times of where politically it was not favorable to practice Qigong again. And so people have sort of had this, the Qigong practitioners in China, this sort of environment where sometimes it's okay, it's even encouraged to practice openly, and then other times it's been very much like, oh, actually, better hide away again, better not do that too openly in public. And a lot of this is because of, various groups who have become influential at different points, and some of them using Qigong practices, I won't name which groups, which then the government has not been in favour of those groups becoming so influential, and so there's been a tendency for people to hide away all of their practices because they don't want any unwanted attention from the government and any consequences from that. And so it's been a really challenging environment for the practice of Qigong in mainland China, ever since the Cultural Revolution, in a sense. Some periods of support, some periods of kind of the opposite. It's been interesting having spent time in China, visited China quite a few times, and talked to people there, different Qigong practitioners, and been around them, and to hear their experiences. Some of the, particularly older practitioners who have lived through quite a lot of this time, and sort of not just hearing their experiences, but just observing them and seeing how this has sort of shaped them, and yet they're still so passionate about their practice. And so there are great practitioners of Qigong and of these other arts, Chinese medicine, and martial arts and so on, who are still there in China and who have persisted through these challenging circumstances. And then again, others who left the country and preserved knowledge that way as well. So there's still quite a lot available, but in many ways, because of that disruption, a lot of things about the practices were disrupted and fragmented in a way. One of the things that has come out of this post-cultural revolution period and this period of reconstruction is the government has sort of, again, sometimes supporting, sometimes not so much supporting, tried to encourage the formulation of like one unified version of these different arts and practices and knowledge. Like, okay, let's bring everyone together, we'll come up with one official version of everything. You can see why they might think that was desirable. But the nature of these practices still is, and always was even more so, incredibly diverse, an incredibly rich source of knowledge. And so in trying to create one sort of uniform official version of things, potentially a lot is lost. A lot of the richness, the detail, the nuance, in coming up with that official version. Now, that's not to say that there's necessarily anything wrong with, some of the official versions of things that have been formulated. It's helpful to recognize, I think, though, that there is also a lot more within some of the other practices that have developed in a more organic way. And yeah, so you can learn good things from those official versions for sure. But yeah, there's also more nuance in some of the other practices as well. Whenever something's sort of put together by a committee, it tends to lose a little bit of its subtlety, a little bit of its nuance, so that everyone can agree on it. And yeah, the nature of working with our energy is such a subtle, nuanced thing. I think it's kind of an important thing to have. Anyway, hopefully this video doesn't get me in any trouble, because, but again, it is history. It's not like this isn't well known, that this is sort of the process that has gone through. And I applaud all the people within mainland China now who are still working to preserve their arts, to pass them on, and also, working with, even the creation of some of these official versions of different practices, because that is one way of preserving at least part of the richness of this knowledge. I think that even has changed over time, in that, as these committees and things have produced one official version of things, they then look to produce official versions of a wider variety of different practices. And I think that's a good thing, in terms of preserving some of this and encouraging its practice. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Hopefully that's an interesting one. I look forward to seeing you on another vlog soon.